The fallen princess. The alien princess sat alone in the ruins of her palace. Her throne was broken, her people scattered, her world silent. Once, she had been the jewel of the stars, a symbol of power and beauty. Now she was only a prisoner of despair, surrounded by shadows. The galaxy had forgotten her. The council had abandoned her. Her enemies whispered that her bloodline would end with her. She had waited for rescue. She had prayed for allies, but no one came. Every night, she told herself the same words: hope is gone. Outside her shattered window, the Empire's warships floated like dark moons. Their lights cut through the black skies, reminding her of her chains. Her guards walked with heavy boots, their laughter cruel and sharp. They called her the broken princess, mocking her weakness. She no longer raised her head to answer. Her heart was tired. Her spirit had grown thin. The galaxy had taken everything from her, and now it waited for her to break. But that night, something strange happened. The air trembled. The palace walls shook. At first, the princess thought it was another storm or another bombing run. But then she saw it. A ship falling through the clouds, fire trailing behind its wings. It was not a warship of the Empire, not a design she recognized. It was small, battered, but it fought the storm like a beast refusing to die. Her eyes widened. A whisper escaped her lips. "Who dares come here?" The ship struck the outer courtyard, throwing dust into the sky. Alarms rang across the palace. Guards rushed to their stations. The princess held her breath as she saw a figure step out of the wreckage. A man, not alien, not machine, but human. He looked fragile compared to the armored giants who ruled the palace. No glowing armor, no strange weapons, only a worn suit and eyes that burned with fire. The guards laughed when they saw him. "What is this weak creature?" they said. "Did the stars send us a toy to kill?" But the princess did not laugh. Something about him was different. He walked with calm steps, as if he had expected this moment, as if he had chosen to stand here in the heart of the enemy. The guards surrounded him, their blades drawn, their voices echoing with cruel joy. The princess leaned forward, her heart pounding. She did not know why, but she could not look away. It had been years since she had felt this fire inside her chest. The man raised his head, his voice calm but strong. "I am here for the princess," he said. The guards burst into more laughter. "The princess? She is nothing," they shouted. "She is broken, forgotten." But the man's gaze did not move. "I came for her," he repeated. No fear, no doubt, only certainty. The princess gasped. Why would a stranger from another world speak her name with such power? Why would a human, one of the most underestimated races in the galaxy, stand here without trembling? The guards attacked, their blades flashing, their voices loud. But the man did not run. He moved like water, fast and sharp. His hands struck, his body turned, and one by one the guards fell. The princess's eyes widened with every move. He was not stronger, not bigger, but he fought with something the Empire had never known. He fought with will. The courtyard became silent. The human stood alone, the guards broken around him. He raised his eyes to the princess's window, and for a moment their gaze met. Her breath caught in her chest. She had thought hope was dead. But now, standing in the ruins of her world, a stranger had come. A human. The silence of despair cracked. A single thought burned inside her heart. Maybe hope has returned. A stranger in the shadows. The princess could not sleep that night. The image of the human fighting the guards stayed in her mind. She had seen warriors fall before. She had seen slaves rise and fail. But never had she seen someone so small, so fragile, stand so strong. The palace halls echoed with whispers. The soldiers spoke of the intruder with mocking voices. Some said he was already dead. Others said he would beg for mercy by dawn. But deep inside, even the guards felt unease. They had never seen a human stand against them without fear. The princess sat in her chamber, the moonlight spilling through broken glass. Her hands trembled as she touched the cold wall. She wondered why her heart refused to rest. Why did her breath catch when she remembered his voice? I came for her. Those words repeated in her mind, over and over, like a forgotten song. Far below, in the shadows of the ruined palace, the human moved silently. He avoided patrols. He walked with purpose. Every step seemed chosen, every glance sharp. It was as if he knew the palace better than those who lived in it. The princess whispered to herself, "Who are you?" That night, he entered the old library. The empire had left it in ruins, the shelves broken, the books scattered. But he walked among them as if searching for answers. His hand traced the carvings of her people's history. He studied the symbols of her ancestors with quiet respect. He was not a thief, not a conqueror, but a seeker. The princess, hidden behind the cracked window above, watched him in silence. She felt her chest tighten. For years she had been called useless, broken, forgotten. But now someone risked everything to walk into her darkness. Someone who carried no crown, no army, no weapon of empire. Only himself. The guards grew restless. They set traps. They hunted him through the halls. But he moved like a shadow, faster than their eyes could follow. Sometimes they swore he vanished into the walls. Sometimes they swore he was behind them before they turned. Fear began to creep into their voices. The princess pressed her palm against the glass. She whispered, "You cannot survive not here." But in her heart, she knew he would, because he did not fight like the others. He did not fight for power. He fought for something greater. She could not name it, but she felt it burning. At dawn, the guards dragged him into the great hall. They chained his arms. They pushed him to his knees before the shattered throne. Their commander laughed. "This is the savior of the princess?" The room filled with cruel voices. The princess turned away, her chest heavy. She had told herself not to care, not to hope. But her heart betrayed her. The commander raised his blade, his voice sharp. "Say your last words, human." The man raised his head, his eyes calm. And in that moment, the hall grew still. "I'm not here to beg," he said. "I'm here to remind you of something you have forgotten." The guards frowned. The commander growled. "And what is that?" The human smiled, a small, defiant smile. "That even the weakest can burn brighter than the stars." The hall shook with anger, blades raised, voices shouting. But the princess felt her breath catch again. She whispered, "Who are you, really?" And deep inside, for the first time in years, she felt her chains tremble. The test of strength. The chains clattered as the guards pulled the human back to the floor. The commander's blade hovered close to his neck. The alien soldiers cheered, certain they would see his blood. But the human did not bow. His eyes remained steady. His chest rose with calm breath. The princess watched from her broken throne. Her heart was torn between fear and something she could not explain. Why was this fragile man not afraid? Why did his voice still echo in her mind? That even the weakest can burn brighter than the stars. The commander pushed his blade against the human's skin. "You will die like all your kind," he growled. But the human's lips curled into a faint smile. "If you truly believe that, then why do your hands shake?" The room froze. The guards looked at their commander. And indeed, his hands trembled. Rage filled the air, but so did doubt. The commander roared, lifting his weapon for the final strike. But before the blade could fall, the human twisted his body. With one sharp movement, he broke free from the chains. The sound echoed like thunder through the hall. Gasps filled the air. The guards rushed forward, weapons raised. But the human moved faster than any of them expected. He dodged their blades. He struck with fists and feet. He used no weapon but his will. And, one by one, the soldiers fell. The princess rose to her feet, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had seen warriors fight with power. She had seen beasts fight with rage. But this human fought with something different. Every strike was born from purpose, every movement from unshaken resolve. The hall became a storm of noise. Blades clashed, voices shouted, chains broke. The human spun, ducked, and struck. The Empire's strongest soldiers could not pin him down. The princess's breath quickened, her heart racing as if it too was fighting. At last, only the commander remained. He towered over the human, his armor thick, his blade glowing with deadly energy. "You are nothing," he roared. "I'm the hand of the Empire." But the human lifted his chin, his eyes sharp. "And I am the hand of hope." The duel shook the hall. The commander struck with brute force, each blow powerful enough to shatter stone. But the human did not meet strength with strength. He slipped past the strikes. He struck where the armor was weak. He moved not as a soldier, but as a survivor. And slowly, the giant began to fall. The final blow came with silence. The commander dropped his weapon, his body crashing to the ground. The hall echoed with gasps and cries. The human stood tall, bruised but unbroken. He turned his gaze upward, and once again his eyes met the princess's. Her heart skipped a beat. For years she had been told to kneel, to surrender, to accept the chains. But this human had done what no army had done. He had shown that the Empire could bleed, that their strength was not eternal, that even in the darkest hall, a flame could rise. The princess pressed her hand against her chest. For the first time in years, she whispered not of despair, but of something dangerous, something forbidden. She whispered of hope. The guards who remained did not move. They stared at the human with fear. They had called him weak, but now they saw the truth. Weakness had turned into power. Fragile flesh had defeated iron, and the Empire's silence was louder than their laughter. The human walked slowly toward the center of the hall. He picked up the broken chains and let them fall to the ground. The sound was like a promise that the old order would not last. The princess leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Who are you?" she whispered, though no one else heard. The man looked up, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "I am human," he said, "and that is enough." The words struck her like a blade. They were simple, but they cut through years of despair. In that moment, she knew this stranger was not just a man. He was the test the galaxy had never expected, the test of strength that came not from power, but from will. Secrets of humanity. The great hall was quiet after the battle. The fallen commander lay in silence, the guards too afraid to move. The human stood in the center, breathing steady, his eyes sharp. But he did not lift his hands in victory. He simply lowered his head as if carrying a weight unseen. From her throne, the princess felt her heart beating fast. This man had fought without fear, yet he carried himself as though fear still lived inside him. Her people had once told her that humans were weak, that they were children among the stars. But here was a man who had broken chains and defeated giants. She could no longer believe the old lies. That night, when the palace grew silent, she sent for him. The guards whispered, some in anger, some in awe. But none dared to stop him as he walked through the broken corridors to her chamber. The doors opened with a low groan, and the human stepped into her world of shadows. The princess rose slowly, her gown torn, her crown long gone. She looked less like royalty and more like a survivor. Yet when the human saw her, he bowed his head with respect. "Why do you honor me?" she asked, her voice soft. "I am no queen. I am a prisoner." The man lifted his eyes. "You are not a prisoner. You are the reason I am here," he said. The words struck her heart like fire. For years, no one had spoken to her with such certainty. They sat together beneath the dim light of broken lanterns. The princess asked him of his world. "What is Earth, this place you call home?" The man smiled faintly, as if remembering something far away. "Earth is small, but it is unbroken," he said. "It has been crushed, invaded, scarred, yet it always rises again." His words were simple, but they carried power. He spoke of oceans and forests, of storms and deserts. He told her of people who fought not because they were strong, but because they refused to surrender. The princess listened in silence, her eyes wide. She realized he was not here to speak of weapons or armies. He was here to speak of will. The human leaned closer, lowering his voice. "But there is something else, something the galaxy has forgotten." The princess tilted her head, her heart tense. "What is it?" she asked. The man's eyes glowed with fire. Humanity carries a force no empire can control. Her breath caught. What force? She whispered. The man's hand clenched into a fist. The force to rise, no matter how many times we fall. The words shook her to her core. She had seen entire races surrender under the weight of the empire. She had watched leaders bow their heads to save themselves. But this man, this human, spoke as if his people carried a fire that could never be put out. The princess turned her gaze away, her voice trembling. If what you say is true, then why come here? Why risk death for me? The man was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke with a voice that was steady. Because your people once believed in hope, and hope cannot be left to die. The room grew still. The princess felt tears sting her eyes, but she did not let them fall. For years, she had buried her heart, hidden her pain. But now this stranger's words were tearing open the walls she had built. She whispered to herself, hope, as if the word itself was forbidden. The human leaned back, his eyes scanning the broken chamber. You have been made to believe you are powerless, he said. But you're not. Your voice still matters. Your people still watch, waiting for a sign. The princess shook her head, her voice bitter. They see only a broken woman, chained by the empire. The human looked at her with steady fire. Then let them see the woman who rises again. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The princess looked at him, really looked, not as a stranger, not as a fool, but as something more. He was not just a man, he was a mirror, showing her what she could be. At last she asked, her voice soft but sharp. You speak of will, of hope, but what drives you, human? What do you truly seek? The man's gaze grew darker, his voice heavy with truth. I seek to remind the galaxy that humanity is not weak. I seek to awaken what even empires fear. Her body froze. Something in his voice told her this was not just words. There was a secret he carried, something hidden in his heart. And for the first time, she felt fear not for him, but of him, not fear of danger, but fear of the power he had yet to reveal. The night grew quiet. The human stood, his shadow stretching long against the walls. We are only at the beginning, he said. And as he walked away, the princess felt her heart race. She whispered into the silence. Who are you really? The chains of the empire. The dawn came with fire in the sky. The empire's ships circled above the ruined palace like vultures. Their lights cut through the clouds. Their engines roared like thunder. The princess stood at her window, her hands pressed against the cold stone. She knew something dark was coming. The doors of her chamber burst open. Guards stormed inside, their faces hard, their voices sharp. Come, princess, they ordered, you will watch. Her heart sank, but she did not resist. She walked with them down the broken halls, each step heavy with dread. They brought her to the central courtyard. Chains clattered, torches burned, soldiers filled the air with cruel laughter. In the center stood the human, bound once more, his arms pulled wide, his body scarred. The empire's commander raised his voice. Behold the weakness of man, he shouted. Behold how easily hope breaks. The soldiers cheered, their voices echoing against the walls. The princess's heart twisted. She wanted to look away, but she could not. She feared this would be the end, the moment the flame was crushed. The commander stepped close to the human, his blade resting against his chest. Bow before us, he growled. Show her what you truly are, nothing but dust. The human lifted his head slowly, his lips curling into a strange smile. Then, against all reason, he laughed. The sound cut through the air like a blade. It was not the laugh of fear, not the laugh of madness. It was the laugh of defiance, strong and wild. The soldiers froze, their cheers fading. Even the commander stiffened, his hand trembling at the sound. The princess gasped, her eyes wide. No one had ever laughed at the empire, not in chains, not at the edge of death. But this human laughed as if he had already won, as if the chains meant nothing, as if pain itself was powerless. The commander roared, striking him across the face. Silence, he demanded. You will not laugh at me." But the human laughed louder, blood on his lips, fire in his eyes. "You fear my laugh," he said, "because it tells you the truth." The courtyard grew still. The soldiers shifted uneasily. They were trained to fear nothing, yet something in the human's voice shook them. The princess's heart raced. His laughter was not only for himself, it was for her. It told her that chains could be broken, that despair could be mocked. The commander tried again, pressing his blade against the human's throat. "Tell her you are weak. Tell her you are broken," he growled. But the human smile only grew. "I am not broken," he said, his voice steady. "I am what you cannot kill." The words struck like thunder. The soldiers whispered among themselves, their eyes darting to the princess. For the first time, she saw doubt in their faces. The Empire's perfect image was cracking, not from weapons, not from war, but from a single man's will. The princess felt her chest tighten. Tears stung her eyes, but did not fall. She whispered to herself, "Why does he not fear them?" And then, in her heart, she heard the answer. Because he is human. The commander grew desperate. "Kill him," he ordered, his voice breaking. But the soldiers hesitated, their hands trembling. No one wanted to be the one to strike him down. His laughter still echoed in their ears, twisting their hearts with something they could not name. The princess stepped forward, her voice sharp for the first time in years. "Stop," she commanded. The courtyard fell silent, every eye turning to her. She stood tall, her chains still heavy, but her spirit rising. "If you kill him, his laughter will never die," she said, her voice steady. "It will follow you, it will haunt you, it will spread." The soldiers looked at one another, fear growing in their eyes. The commander roared in rage, but even he could not hide the doubt. The human lifted his head once more, smiling through blood. "You see," he said softly, "your empire is not unbreakable. It shakes at a laugh." The princess felt her heart blaze. In that moment, she understood. The empire could command armies. It could destroy worlds. But it could not destroy the spirit of a man who refused to bow. And she, too, would no longer bow. The courtyard burned with silence. The laughter still hung in the air. And the princess whispered the words she had once buried. "Hope is alive." The rising flame. The courtyard remained silent long after the laughter faded. The soldiers stood frozen, their blades still raised, but their spirits cracked. The commander's rage boiled, yet even his voice could not restore their fear. The human had planted a seed, and the seed had begun to grow. The princess looked at the man, his face bruised, his body chained, yet his spirit burning. She felt something shift inside her. For years she had been nothing but a shadow, a prisoner wearing a crown of despair. But now, in his presence, her heart beat like a drum of war. She realized she was no longer only watching, she was becoming. That night, the Empire locked him away in the dungeons. The walls were damp, the air thick with silence. Yet the silence did not last, for whispers spread through the palace. Whispers of the human who laughed at death. Whispers of the princess who spoke against chains. The slaves in the kitchens heard. The guards on the walls heard. Even the servants who had forgotten their voices began to remember. Hope moved like smoke through every corridor, impossible to stop. The princess went to the dungeon, her steps steady. The guards tried to block her path, but their eyes wavered. She looked at them not with fear, but with fire. And for the first time in years, the guards stepped aside. She found him sitting in chains, his back against the wall. Yet when he saw her, he smiled, as if he had been waiting. "Why do you still smile?" she asked, her voice shaking. The human's answer was simple. "Because your people are watching." The princess frowned. "They are broken. They are afraid." The man shook his head. "No, they are waiting. They only need a spark." Her hands trembled. "And you think you are that spark?" He leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. "No, we are." Her breath caught. For the first time, he included her in his fire. She had thought of herself as a prisoner, but to him she was more. To him, she was part of the rising flame. The days that followed shook the palace. Servants began to disobey, small orders. Slaves began to whisper the humans' words. Guards began to question commands. Every laugh, every whisper, every step turned into a spark, and sparks became fire. The Empire sensed it. The commanders shouted, the soldiers tightened their grip, but the harder they pushed, the stronger the whispers grew. The humans' courage spread like a song, and the princess's presence gave it strength. She began to walk the halls not as a captive, but as a queen reborn. Her voice grew louder, her back straighter. When the slaves saw her, they lifted their heads. When the soldiers saw her, they lowered their eyes. She was no longer the broken princess. She was becoming the symbol of rebellion. One night, in the shadows of the ruined temple, she stood beside the human. Her eyes burned with the same fire as his. "What if we fail?" she whispered. The human looked at her, his voice calm and steady. "Failure is only when we stop trying." His words struck deep. She realized that was the secret of his people. Not strength, not weapons, not numbers, but the will to rise again and again, even when the stars themselves turned dark. Together they began to gather the forgotten. The workers, the slaves, the beaten soldiers. One by one they joined, drawn by the fire they could not ignore. The rebellion was not yet an army. It was not yet strong, but it was alive, and life was enough. The princess stood before them, her voice echoing through the night. "They told you I was broken. They told you hope was dead," she said. "But look around you. Look at him. Look at me." The crowd stirred, their eyes glowing. "Hope has returned," she declared, "and it will not die again." The people roared, their voices shaking the ruins. The fire had spread. The rising flame could not be hidden. The humans smiled, watching the once broken princess become something greater. She was no longer a prisoner waiting for rescue. She was the flame itself. The empire above the skies did not yet know, but its walls were already cracking, not from weapons, not from war, but from laughter, from whispers, from hope. The rising flame was here, and nothing could stop it. The Princess of Hope. The sky burned with the fire of war. The Empire's ships filled the heavens, their cannons glowing like suns. The palace shook with thunder, walls breaking, towers falling. Yet in the heart of the ruins, a flame burned brighter than the storm. The human stood at the front, his body scarred, his eyes steady. Beside him, the princess walked with her head high, her gown torn, but her spirit unbroken. Behind them, the broken, the forgotten, the slaves, the rebels. An army not born of power, but of will. An army ready to rise. The commander of the empire descended with his soldiers. His voice thundered across the battlefield. "You cannot win. You are nothing but dust against the stars." But the human stepped forward, his voice strong. "We are dust that does not bow." The rebels roared, their voices shaking the night. The princess raised her hand, her voice echoing. "For years I was called broken. For years I was called forgotten." Her eyes blazed as she looked at her people. "But tonight, I am not broken. Tonight, I am hope." The battle began. Blades clashed, ships roared, the ground trembled with fire. The Empire fought with weapons, the rebels fought with spirit. The human moved like lightning, striking where the giants were weak. The princess fought beside him, not with steel, but with her voice. Every word she spoke became a weapon. Every shout gave her people strength. The rebels pushed forward, their courage growing with every step. The soldiers of the Empire faltered, their hearts heavy with doubt. They had been told humans were weak. They had been told the princess was broken. But now they saw the truth with their own eyes. And truth was stronger than any blade. The commander charged, his armor glowing, his weapon raised. He struck at the human with fury, each blow shaking the earth. But the human did not break. He met each strike with will. He fought not alone, but with the fire of every soul beside him. The princess cried out, her voice sharp, "You cannot kill what refuses to die." The rebels surged, their cries louder than the cannons. The human struck one final blow. The commander fell, his weapon shattered, his armor broken. The courtyard roared with victory. The Empire's flag fell into the dust. Silence followed. The smoke cleared, the night sky opened. The human stood tall, his chest heaving, his eyes still burning. The princess stepped beside him, her people gathering around. She looked at him, her voice trembling yet steady. "I had lost all hope," she whispered, "until you appeared." The words echoed across the battlefield. The people bowed, not in fear, but in unity. They did not see a broken princess anymore. They saw a queen reborn, a symbol of defiance. And beside her, the human, the flame that had sparked it all. The galaxy would remember this night, not as the fall of a world, but as the birth of a new dawn. The human's name would be carried in whispers across stars. The princess's story would be told in every shadow, and the empire, once thought eternal, would tremble at the memory of laughter. The princess raised her hand, her voice clear. "We rise," she said. The rebels roared with her. The night sky shone with fire, not of destruction, but of rebirth. The human looked at the stars, his voice soft. "This is only the beginning," he said. And the princess, with fire in her eyes, answered, "Yes, the beginning of hope."